2020 dividend, which represents 372% of the premiums we paid in 2019. And because those funds had previously been made whole, that dividend was posted to the general fund, and I know we're going to talk about that later on tonight, but that's where it currently sits, and it is in the ending balance at this point in the general fund. There are several items I want to make note of in the payment listing. Vouchers 698 and 733, totaling $6,938, were paid to the Workers' Comp Bureau. So they gave us money, I paid them money. But that is the entire 2021 premium. I chose to pay it in advance rather than paying in installments, as had been done in the past, so that we could obtain a 2% discount. Warrants I'm just going to use the short numbers. Warrants number 39 and 40 were voided because they were never cashed by the recipients. Warrant 315 was voided and reissued as a voucher because it was paid electronically, a mistake on my part. Warrants 317 through 324 and 348 were all voided due to printer errors in my office. The printer didn't seem to want to work correctly. They were all reissued with new warrants. Warrants 345 and 367 paid to Pro on Call, totaling $963.75, were for the purchase of the conference speakerphone, which we are using tonight, along with 2 wireless mics. And that invoice was paid using Coronavirus Relief Fund money. Warrant 50346 in the amount of $4,231 was paid to Dills Plumbing, and that was for the installation of the touchless sinks, toilets, and urinal in the restrooms. And again, that invoice was paid by the Coronavirus Relief Fund. That amount is a little bit less than you approved. Dills was able to utilize the existing urinal, and so they did reduce the amount of the original quote by that amount of money. And finally, warrant 347, and a small one in the amount of $80.59 was paid to Captain Nine's Pizza and Subs, and that was pizza for the employee appreciation lunch. And I mention it because I want to thank Charlie Zecker because he discounted the pizzas by 36%. So that's very much appreciated. Just a point of information, at our meeting earlier this month, Mr. Raymert asked me about how many payments were still due from the cemetery for the funds that were loaned by the trustees to purchase the land back in 2006, as well as how many remaining payments we owe to First National Bank of Germantown for the water and sewer district loan. The amount we still are to be receiving from the cemetery is $39,276.23. Those payments are open-ended based on the cemetery's cash flow, but they've been running at $10,000 semi-annually or $20,000 in total for the past several years. The remaining amount owed to the water and sewer district loan to the bank is $103,072.50. And we make payments twice a year in the amount of $10,307.25, and they will be paid through December of 25. And now, are there any questions about anything in the financial reports? If not, I will ask for a motion to approve the financial reports and authorize the payment of December bills, warrants 317 to 373, and vouchers 698 to now 765 because of today's payment. Those represent payroll direct deposit, payroll tax withholdings, and other electronic payments.
So moved.
And there's a second. Any discussion of the motion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye. Aye.
Any opposed? The motion is approved. I've also given you the amendments that we made of updated appropriations for 2020. Every year, you approve the original permanent appropriations at the January organizational meeting, and then at the end of the year, as to reflect all the changes that have been made in the appropriations throughout the year, you approve the appropriation amended amounts. And so we will need to do that using a resolution. And that will be 2020-44.
I'll introduce resolution 2020-44 to approve the amended 2020 appropriations.
I'll second.
Thank you. Any discussion of resolution 2020-44? Hearing none, I will call the roll. Mrs. Reed?
Yes.
Mr. Stubbs?
Yes.
And Mr. Raymond?
Yes.
Resolution 2020-44 is adopted. Okay. Let's skip over item 8. That is indeed the discussion on the potential transfer of money to the road department from the general fund, and let's move on to budgets to allow the Chief Anzig to leave more quickly, and then Mr. Holbrook, and then he'll be able to leave after we have that discussion. And I guess I would suggest starting by letting you ask questions of the chief. Now, you have the actual budget that they prepared, and you have a revised version dated December 21st. In addition to which, you also have an analysis I prepared and sent to, well, you also have the salary schedule for 2021, which the police department provided, and they have proposed a 2% increase in salaries. And then, as I was starting to say, you have an analysis I prepared, which compares the budget their draft budget to the original 2020 budget, not this one we just changed, and also our actual spending for 2020. So is there any discussion of the proposed budget for the police department?
One thing I'd like to point out, it's further down, the actual account number is 2081-210-599-0. It's other expenses. You'll notice it says $150,000. That's where pretty much the CARES Act money went into that fund. It's still available to us, but it's not really earmarked for anything. My intention would be to let it sit there, because if we do need it, it's there for us to use. But I don't anticipate any need. Of course, we never anticipated COVID either. So, but that's what that particular line item is, and I wanted to make sure that you guys knew where that money went to.
So outside of that large amount of money, there's nothing out of the ordinary in this budget from last year. It seems pretty similar to what we had last year. Lori's salary obviously going down with the replacement.
Yeah, with her being gone, we did accumulate a little more money in our, or we're spending less money, I should say, in salaries and benefits and things like that. But for the most part, everything else is the same as it every year we turn it in. So, you know, some of the things you'll see, like dispatching, I think the actual cost of dispatching right now is $36,000, but we always put it at $40,000. It's only a small amount of money, but when you have those there in different accounts, it adds up. So, and I think this is actually the first time in German Township Police Department side's history that we've actually had a budget over $1 million. Typically, it's always been somewhere probably 650s to 850s, but with the CARES Act, that kind of bumps it up. So when you look at the numbers, you're like, wow, they have a lot of money. Yes, we have a lot of money right now, but that's the reason why. So,
But I get several things, and they're just small points to point out. I'm mean, you guys have been doing this a long time, so just noting a few things. One, we do have, $794,000 in receipts planned. Mark may be able to answer this better, but, it looks like, approved last year was 776, but we actually are bringing in 790, so there's nothing baked in for any kind of, increased revenues or anything like that, Mark, and should we be baking in anything for the uptick in the property values and all that kind of stuff?
The, property tax line, which is, account number 101, is a number that was actually provided to us by the county. So that is what they expect we will be receiving,
It's what?
as well as the homestead and rollback I estimated, which I put in at 45,000. And the other numbers are similar to last year's budget, and I just estimated those.
Okay, so revenue this year, year-to-date, we show $791,000 for budgeting revenue next year, $794. So we're basically flat on the revenue side. On the payments year-to-date, we're $782,000. Again, revenue $791, payments year-to-date $782. So we're slightly below where we started the year on the revenue. So we're actually going to increase our balance for 2020 by $8,000, as long as nothing goes crazy the last 2 days of this year, which doesn't appear to happen. So kudos to you guys this year. You guys added to your account balance. I understand the way we appropriate. I just want to be very clear. We're starting the year with $230,000 in the bank, plus we're adding $137,000 of CARES funds. So really, it's about $350,000 balance that we'll have going into next year.
332 is the exact number.
Okay, so if 332 is correct, then I think we're actually going down a little bit in 2020, not up a little bit. But regardless, let's call it 330 that we have in the bank. Based on the way the budget's laid out, and I understand why you guys do this, you got $1 million laid out in appropriations, and only one line item there that you were talking about, that $150,000, this other expenses, that's really your fluff. If we spend everything but that $150, our balance will go from $330,000 down to $200. So we're going to be dropping significantly next year if we do spend that, because our expenses laid out here are well more than the proposed revenue. So that's the only thing I'll note, because we passed the levy, I think, in 2016, started getting that revenue in 2017. Ever since 2017, 18, and 19, we've been able to accumulate more in our balance. This will be the first year that we'll actually be tapping into that balance and using some of those funds. So we just got to be very aware of that, because how long that could sustain, it could be only 3 years, you know. So that's the only thing I would say. If we're starting with 330 in the balance, that's what I would target for finishing up next year if we can. I would just shoot for finishing up with at least 330 in it.
And just because it's appropriate doesn't mean we'll have it.
Absolutely.
Just I know they overshoot it, so we don't have to have special meetings throughout the year if something arises. So you're right.
The 150 is not enough. I just want to make sure we know that we really probably should have like maybe 250 in that account to really set ourselves up for ending where we end.
Right.
Right.
So that's the only thing. We'd have to pull something into Chief's point. We got a lot of other things where we kind of rounded up on the budget versus what we normally spend. If you add all those up, they're probably enough. I just want to make sure we're all on the same page. We got 330 in the bank account to start the year. Let's try to shoot for 330 in the bank account at the end of the year.
Absolutely.
Well, it looks like with staffing too, that might, and maybe with the increases, but it started out, 320 last year was approved, but only 194 was spent, in that line item, which is 210, 190. And then, so it's really positive for, we actually have an additional, if you will, 135,000 in there.
That's the CARES money.
That's the CARES money. So the CARES money is being counted there and down the 150?
You're seeing a
This year's actuals,
from
the
CARES.
194,000 is net of 138,000 of CARES money.
Okay.
So it's actually more like
It's
320.
Yeah,
Okay.
315 is actually what we spent.
So this is savings, okay.
But, you know, if you look at the total spending this year, after the CARES money was processed, they're at $680,000. If you add back the 140,000, that's about an 820 actual spend for this year versus the original budget of 876. So they did not fully spend their budget.
Now, another thing, you know, when we talk about the numbers that you brought up, there's about a $9,000 difference, which isn't a lot. But we would be a lot closer to those numbers if we were able to have things like the pancake breakfast with Santa the COVID put a, squashed a lot of things that we like to do with our community. Unfortunately, it reflects at the end of the year where we got a little bit extra here, but we'd rather have been able to do that and enjoy the camaraderie of our citizens, but unfortunately. Hopefully this coming year we'll be able to
It's
do it.
National Night Out
National Night Out.
and the Pancake Breakfast. Those are two big events right there,
Right.
so.
So, hopefully this coming year, we'll be able to host those things and, have a more normal year. But when you brought it up, that's the first thing I thought of, I'm not saying we spend $1,000 on the pancake breakfast, but, every little bit counts towards that. So it's a good thing that we have that. I would much rather spend under than go over. So.
Yeah, I think last comment on two things real quick. One is just, Mark, do you know, are we able, because what it shows is that the proposed budget, the way it is showing a negative balance of $73,000 at the end of the year.
Which account?
This is, I guess it's total police funds. Let me look and see if it breaks
So,
down.
page 2081.
Yep, that's right.
Okay, you don't have the revised one in front of you, but with the CARES money,
Okay.
the estimated revenue and the total spend that they're planning in that particular fund, right now, we would, if they fully spent it, and the money came in exactly as we're budgeting for revenue, we would be down at 30,000 balance at the end of the year.
Okay.
From a starting point of 330.
Okay.
Now, the 150, add that back to the 30, we'll be at 180. That's still down from 330.
Yeah, I think that's the key, is there's another 150 in all these other accounts, that if we spend everything exactly as appropriated, which I know we don't always do that, I'm just making the point, we really try and spend 150,000 in what's in the rest of these accounts. I don't know if the car vehicle will come in under or whatever, but shooting for ending where we start the year would be my objective on all budgets.
In all
Start the
honesty,
year.
no, I think they would come in, both of them, probably more closer to 90 than 100. But again, when we're talking about 2,000 here, 3,000 there, it adds up at the end of the year, so.
Yeah, again, it's not to change the appropriation or change what we're doing here, it's just that we're all on the same leg of, if we
Right.
spend what we appropriate, we're gonna be in some deep trap next year. I'm good, I appreciate the work and what you guys have done.
I might point out a couple of other minor things with the small funds. And that is, we have, the department has budgeted basically what they budgeted every year, last year, in those smaller funds. We've not spent that at all. We didn't come close this year to spending those amounts in the small funds. But if we would, 3 of those small funds would end up with a negative balance. We would not have any cash in the account. So it is something you all want to be aware of next year. If any of those small funds end up spending the larger amounts that you're budgeting,
Right.
we've got a problem with cash balance.
I have one question. Down on the improvement of sites, chairs, and garage door openers,
Yes.
so this is gonna stick out to me. Each chair costs $800?
No, I think that's for all the replacement of every chair in the police department. Okay.
Getting for $800 a piece?
No. No,
It says $800 per next to it, so.
I don't believe they're $800 per, that may be a typo, but, no, I always try to be very frugal with other people's money.
That's stuck out to me really bad.
Yeah.
That's why I wanted to ask and check on that.
Yeah,
That's better, $800 total, better than $800 per chair. I thought maybe you guys were getting some fancy massage.
yeah, that's right.
I don't have any other questions on the police budget.
Are there any changes that you're going to ask me to make on the police budget before we approve it on the 4th? If so, I want to obviously know that tonight.
I mean, you could just have, Joe, just follow, or Chief, sorry, just follow up and make sure they're not $800 per chair, but I don't expect that at all.
I would appreciate that as
Yeah,
well.
yeah.
But, no, that's all sure. I don't see any other, there's no issues with this budget. Thanks for all the time you and Lori and Sean have put into coming up with it, and Mark as well.
Yeah, because the way this is written, it says $2,000 for garage openers, and then chairs $800 per chair, but.
Yeah, let me I'm gonna double check on that for you, and I'll, do you want me to email it out to you?
Yeah, just let us know before it's officially approved, because we might have to
Right.
adjust the price of those chairs a little bit, and do some adjusting there.
I'll quote to sell you some chairs for $700.
Oh, okay. Let me write that
I may
down.
buy five for $150.
Yes, that was just something that stuck out to me the most. And the reason it's at 150, we appropriate it is just for emergency purposes, really.
Right.
Okay.
And hopefully we don't have any kind of natural disaster or anything like that, but we never know. I mean, look what's happened in the last year with the COVID, so.
So, if there's no other questions about the police budget, we can move on to the road budget. You have Jeremy's draft budget, and it's dated December 8th. I don't think there've been any changes since then. And then you also have the same kind of an analysis that I prepared that compares his budget to the approved budget at January of last year for 2020, not the one we had amended tonight, and also the year-to-date spending through yesterday, and there are no changes to the road year-to-date spending. Any questions, comments from Mr. Holbrook?
Do you have anything before we get started?
The only thing I know that, that I can think of off the top of my head is, we built in a 2% increase in salaries as well, to kind of follow in the footsteps of the police department. So, I did not do a salary index for Scott and myself, so, but I did build that into the budget. Other than that, we did see an increase due to the replacement road levy taken into effect in 2021. And also, I think we'll see a little bit of an increase in gas tax. We didn't see that as heavy as we would have liked to because of the corona back in March and April, and they had stay-at-home orders that kind of cut a lot of fuel sales out. But actually, what did we say, Mark? There was about 3 months that was down, and then it kind of bounced back to normal, I think. But so there should
3 or 4 months.
Yeah, there should be a little bit of an increase there as well.
I'm expecting that the receipts and the gas tax will be closer to what they've been in other years in the past.
If not a little bit more.
Since the rate went up.
Right. Other than that, I know it looks like we had a lot of carryover this year, and I attribute that to, as he said, kind of appropriating everything that was possible. Kind of hard to see what money's available when it's not appropriated because it doesn't show up on any of the forms that I get. So a lot of that increase was just money that hadn't been appropriated that I was unable to see on the forms, on the fund status and stuff like that. So, to your point, Mr. Remmert, about ending the year with the same amount of carryover that you started, I don't know if that's such a good idea with the amount of money that we have carried over this year, just strictly based on the fact that the roads are suffering. They need every dollar that we can put towards them. Now, I'm not saying we should spend ourselves to zero, by no means. Historically, I think we've shot for like $40,000 to $60,000 in carryover. Now, that's been some time ago, back when Mr. Warback was clerk. And that was enough to get us carried into the next year, get the salaries paid, get fuel paid, get what salt paid in the beginning of the year until the money started trickling back in. I'm open to suggestion on what you think we should end the year off with, but, if you see our carryover, what was the carryover across all funds, Mark? Do you know off the top of your head?
Yes, it's on the, so you're gonna start the new year with almost 27,000 in motor vehicle license, almost 27,000 in gas tax fund. Your road and bridge will be at 30,000. Your road levy fund will be at 110,
190.
and your permissive motor vehicle fund will be at 30. So a couple of 30, couple of 27, one is 110.
Roughly 220. So, you know, should we start 2022 with another 200 and some $1,000 in there when the cost of doing business, or rephrase that, the cost of repairing roads keeps incrementally going up every year? Is half that money, or if not more, better serve the public spending it, you know, repairing the roads, doing chip seal, doing pavement marking, you know, pothole repair and that sort of thing, than just keep carrying it over? That would be my only concern.
Yeah, your situations are a little bit similar, but very different in a way. So a lot of your spend is discretionary. I'll call it discretionary because you have the choice of whether you want to make the repairs or not. Whereas the police, a lot of it trends off of what the salaries are, and it's driven by the salaries, the majority of the spend in that budget. And so when I'd ask him to start and finish the year in the same spot, it's because if we start eating into it, there's really no lever to pull back, and if we don't pass the levy, we're toast there.
Right.
And so it's like you got to try to trend yourself as much as you can to start and finish your year in the same exact spot. You're in a little bit different where if you have the 200,000 and you think it's super important to do a few road repairs and make those, that's fine. It's not like you're giving you and Scott a bunch of raises and then we'll have to pull away from you guys. So it's different. So I don't want to seem like I'm speaking out two sides of my mouth. So I understand that. I think the point is, none of us that I'm aware of have sit around and talked about introducing new levies. And so if you want to eat into what is built into your bank account to start the year, if you want to eat into that, it's got to be very purposeful and reasonful of why you would do that, and understand that, you know, it's just not going to fill that piggy bank right back up, right? Like, it's going to go down, and we might sit at 40 or 50,000. If they feel like that's a sweet spot, that's okay. The thing I would say is your budget, I think, is somewhere in the $600,000 range to spend every year. So there's not a perfect answer of where you should start, but I think 40,000 is pretty trim for a $600,000 budget. I mean, you're less than 10% of your spend per year. If we start dropping off some of these motor vehicle taxes, gas tax, or whatever, you don't have much of a buffer there, right? And so, I would feel more comfortable holding at least a call for 20% of what my spend is for a year. That way, if stuff starts to drop off, you have a little bit in the bank to start to adjust your spend and be able to redirect. You know? If you're sitting there at 10% or 8% or less, you're not going to have much time to react, or you're going to be at ground zero and asking for the general fund, right?
One thing I think I want to point out about the road levy fund is that we share that with the city. And this year, we only gave the city $65,000, which was the amount that was appropriated in January. But we brought in almost $130,000. So that's about half. Next year, the county auditor tells us we're going to have $180,000 in the road levy, which means if we give them about half, that's $90,000. There was also some feeling, at least on the city's part, that we've not in the past always given them their full share of how much of their portion of the road levies come in. I have not analyzed that with the city finance director, Pat Shively, but at some point I'm going to do that with her. And if there is some deficit that we haven't paid, then we have to pay that out of this fund. So we're talking about $40,000 being our ending balance. Jeremy has actually built in an additional $20,000 into his spending, assuming that would go to the city to help pay some past deficit. But we don't know whether that's needed at this point, and whether that's a good number, too high, too low, none of us know. That seem fair, Jeremy, the way I explained that?
Perfectly.
I'm not sure how we could have underpaid the city when the percentage split comes from the county.
That percentage
Based on property values.
is based on property value between the city, the incorporated and unincorporated, but it has to be researched by the fiscal officer.
Okay.
It's not just something sent to the township and says, here's the split, it's, you know, 60-40 or 50-50 or whatever. So, you know, whether or not there was any problems with finding that information, reporting that information, or using the proper information.
Okay,
That would be the only way that there,
likely.
that would be the only way there would be an issue or a problem or a mistake in the
Right.
division of the road levy funds.
When we looked at the past 5 years, it was not in a given year 50%, and that's why we were talking about this and looking at it in your office, but there was some talk about the timing, and maybe we did something later that was catching up for another time, so I agree. I think we should look at it, but it's definitely not been clear, like a clear about 50% cutout too.
It's not 50, yeah,
No.
it's 50-50, it's based on whatever.
Well, it's not, I shouldn't say, it's not a set percentage over the years.
Right, okay.
It's been up and down.
Yeah,
right.
it's different every year as the property values change. You know, new homes get built in the town, new homes get built in the township. You know, people's, you know, but even if they build a barn, that increases your property tax. Or,
So, I guess the only point on that is just, you know, if you plan to eat in, you know, make sure you're doubling back with him on how much buffer should we be keeping just for that piece alone.
right? I'm gonna look at that 20% and see where that puts me as far as carryover. And the same as with the chief of police. We never spend everything that's appropriated, regardless of what fund it's in, whether it's in salaries, whether it's in, you know, salt, gas, you know, fuel, all those things are budgeted on the high side rather than the low side.
Yeah, but you have a different, you have different factors. If we had a heavy snow one year, you know.
True.
Salt, buying salt and, you know.
Well, we all remember the $100 a ton of salt.
Right.
And you couldn't even.
That doesn't, you know, we
Right.
don't have that kind of effects on us.
Right.
A bad season doesn't.
Well, that's those unforeseens that you were
Right.
talking about.
Right.
You know, I mean, you talked about the COVID, what about the tornado in Trotwood?
Right.
I mean, you had that here, and your officers were working quadruple time trying to protect, you know, the businesses down the business park or open houses, or, you know, it would be a huge increase in salaries.
And
So,
one of the things you've built into this one too is the replacement of the backhoe.
yes,
Is that correct? So if something were to happen down the road, that's something that could fall off for
right,
another year or two,
right.
if necessary. And the $60,000, looks like backhoe replacement, was that the trade-in value, including the
That
trade-in
was
value?
including the trade-in. And the way we would probably do that, and is, we would make sure we had a good number from the dealer for trade-in. Then we'd put it on Gov Deals and set the minimum at the trade-in value.
Yep.
And if it went,
It's
bye-bye.
not-
If it didn't, it would go to the dealer as a trade-in.
Absolutely, and I think,
That way you kind of play them against one another,
yeah.
you know.
I thought that was a little low, based on what I've seen.
Well, and you
And
think,
it's a very well kept one.
if you think about it, the dealer has to have some markup room.
Oh, yeah.
So,
Yeah.
you know, it all comes down to, you know, when it gets put on Gov Deals, is there somebody in the market to spend that kind of money on a hoe in that condition?
Right.
So that's what it basically comes down to, but yeah. And one of the things that's not built into this budget at all is the sale of the old dump truck, which has not happened yet. We just finished the, the Creekside stabilization, which is the reason I was holding on to the old truck, was to haul the concrete in, so we didn't damage the new truck. So, you know, we're hoping for 20 to 25,000 for it on Gov Deals. So that's income that isn't even built into the budget.
That's good to know.
So,
I did not put that in
yeah,
to the revenue side.
yeah.
And that would be in the road and bridge fund? Or where would that go?
I would, yeah, probably Road and Bridge.
Well, we actually took the new.
We split that up.
Out of several.
Yeah, we took it from a half
Probably put
a.
it back in percentage wise.
So yeah,
What-
permissive, and motor
Yeah.
vehicle, and road and bridge, and, yeah.
Makes sense.
But other than that, I think all the rest of the line items in my budget are the same or similar to what we've done in the past, other than the increase in salary and the purchase of the, possible purchase of the backhoe.
And for Tyler, for you, there's several years we skipped, salary increases. several years, we skipped it because of budget issues, so.
And last year, you only wanted a 1%, 1.5%.
1%.
Well, yeah, I think you got a 2 there, right?
Yeah.
I think we.
We did give them 2, I believe, this year. But
It was twisting his
Jeremy
arm a little bit.
Did not want it.
He didn't? No.
We just felt it important, or you all felt it was important.
I didn't complain behind closed doors.
My only question is, and I tried the marketing, it was like substantially different from what was approved last year than what was actually spent. Actually, I did it on both your guys' budgets, but salt. So 6,000, a little over 6,500 is what was spent. Did you just appropriate that 30,000?
30,000 is kind of, I won't call it worst case scenario, but it's above average. But it didn't snow last year at all. And that's what, another thing that helped the carryover for 2021 is, I think we salted 3 times. So, you know, that would be the reason we didn't use that. Now, you know, every year you can't say, oh, well, last year we only spent $6,000, so we're only gonna appropriate $6,000, because I guarantee you, 9 times out of 10, we're gonna blow through $6,000, like in 2 deliveries. So,
Yeah, and I didn't bring one, I had last year's budget ready to go, and I did it all, so I could do it on 2 years. Okay, that was, I just tried to point out the ones that were very different, so that was the one that kind of stuck out to me. The one's road repair, which obviously needs to be done.
right.
We get it.
I don't have any further questions on Jeremy's budget.
Is there any changes that the trustees want me to make before I present this one for approval on next Monday on the 4th?
I don't have any.
I have nothing hard for sure. There's just a couple, unless I don't have the most recent, like Jeremy, for instance, on just on your permissive, I think the permissive motor vehicle, the starting balance is 28. Between the spend and receipts, it goes down to like a negative $1,100. If you can see that, your ending budget.
The revised one is now $30,000,
Okay,
and it goes down to $167 if he spends
okay, that's all.
the amount on the road repair that
If
he's
we're not
anticipating.
approving ones that are showing up to be negative at the end. That's the only thing I was hoping we would have adjusted, so it sounds like it's been revised.
There's no negatives in his budget, like we discussed earlier with those small funds in the police budget.
Okay.
No negatives.
And that's not a hard and fast one. I mean, Chief Ainsley, same thing. I'm not asking for them to be changed, just as we go forward, like, when we do the budget, we can try to keep them to where they don't go below 0. We just want to make the appropriations. I understand why we appropriate everything we expect to have, but beyond that, I would try to avoid that.
All right. Well, if you can, as I'm sure Mark will attest to, you don't get a lot of bills from us that you have to pay.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
So you know, we try to run as tight of a ship as we can, especially with just 2 people, you know, it just.
It's not that, it's more of a, I know you got a lot of different funds, and you can take different things out of different funds, just the presentation of it, showing it to budget to go negative. I think if we try to explain that to other people, it'd be hard to explain
Right.
exactly why we show that way, so. Okay. Good enough, I'm good with both. Again, to all 3 of you, I appreciate, again, the presentation piece of it. To me, it makes a lot of sense the way it's laid out. It's logical, shows us versus last year, and it also shows us where we started the year and where we expect to finish. Obviously, appropriations are not exactly where we expect, but it makes sense to me.
I do like the comments on the side too, to kind of say, well, this is why it's in there, that's helpful.
If there's no further questions on Jeremy's budget, I think he has one thing he wants to tell us. You put on your screenshot about Little Twin?
Oh, yeah, I mentioned that we had finished the bank stabilization on that. I wanted to publicly thank Kenny Lucas. He donated the concrete, which apparently he had a barn that burned down on his property that was exactly 1 mile away from the site. So it was a nice, easy, quick drive over to Diamond Mill Road. We loaded the material and brought it back, and super easy to get it in and out of. Had his permission, and you know, we kind of did him a favor, getting rid of some of it, and did us a favor because we didn't have to buy any fill to do that project, but, we did get that completed, so that was the only thing I needed to report on, other than the budget.
We want to chat that other question we had last meeting.
Sorry.
The other question he had last meeting, you have it on your summary or agenda, but about the
I
reimbursement.
think it's number
Yeah.
8.
What I would suggest is now, let's delay looking at the budgets for the general fund, the trash fund, and the other smaller funds. Let's discuss the potential transfer, and then Jeremy and the chief can leave if they want to, so they can have the rest of their evening while we slog through the rest.
That would be appreciated.
This is the workers' comp money that came back in.
Now, just as a reminder, we got a check for $27,565 from the workers' comp. It's the third dividend we received this year. And since we had fully paid each fund back for the 2019 premium payments, the auditor of state told us we could put it into the general fund, which I did when I received the check a week or two ago. And as you all discussed on the meeting on the 14th, Jeremy's request that perhaps some or all of that go back into the funds, specifically was interested in his. And because it is a tight ship trying to keep the roads up. But you decided that you wanted to wait and talk about it until after we had the check. We now have the check.
And what was the percentages?
The percentages are, the general fund gets 6.4%, the trash fund gets 3.2%, your road department, Jeremy, gets 21%, and the police gets 69%. This is how much the bill was split in 2020. I don't think 2019 was much different.
I don't have a problem putting it back to the funds that it came out of.
I guess the only thing I look at is we're gonna continue to have premiums that come out of the road and police and so forth. And it really, I mean, it would be extra money, but it would just be money that would be there to pay the premiums
Next time.
in the future.
Yeah.
So that was kind of the reason I brought up the fact of splitting it back the way it originally came out. It wasn't that, you know, oh, well, the police department got the corona money, I'd like to have, you know, all of this money. You know, to me, it would be helpful to pay any future premiums. And it would offset my budget that I pay for premiums, just, you know, to have that extra money to dole out to workman's comp that was reimbursement money instead of having to dig into the actual tax money.
And I will remind you, I've already paid the 2021 workers' comp premium. It's in the 2020 spending. So we will not pay another payment to the Workers' Comp Bureau until next December, when hopefully I can do the same thing and pay it in advance.
Can I make a comment, Mark?
Yeah, I think that's a logical approach to it. I don't have a significant, I have two things on the same topic though. I mean, when I look at the general fund, it looks like where we started 2020 was 119,000, and where we're gonna end the year is somewhere around 150,000. It really, that difference is not necessarily attributed to this worker comp reimbursement, but, I mean, if you take it away, we're basically flat. So, which is fine, that's a good thing, but I'm just saying it's not like the general fund is just pumping money in and increasing, and we have a lot of buffer there. So I understand why we might want to also keep some in the general fund. Now, on the flip side, you had brought up another issue that we don't have on the agenda that I think we need to probably discuss a little bit further, and that's the cemetery maintenance. I'm okay, I mean, to get in compliance with the ORC, I say I'm okay. By legal, sitting next to the police officer, I should be saying, let's follow the ORC and make sure that we're doing something about that this year. And so,
Losing everybody.
I don't know what the situation, what's fair, what's right, what's reasonable, but I mean, transferring a certain amount of money every time you guys perform maintenance or whatever we want to set up there to make sure that you guys are getting reimbursed for the expenses on that piece, I think makes sense and something we should talk here. I don't know that we need to change the budget, but it definitely needs to be a change of principle on how we approach it. So I think that's one of this same kind of conversation, money from the general fund to your fund, so I think talking together. I don't know how much you're incurring, how much is reasonable, how much is.
I think we figured it was, I don't have that, I didn't know we were gonna talk about that, so I thought it was between $2,000 and $3,000 a year is what it actually physically costs the road department to maintain the cemeteries for an entire year, which is not a great deal of money, but, you know, we've been doing it for 25 years. So, and, you know, I know that the general fund bought a portion of the mower last year, which was helpful, but in reality, we don't mow any of the roads with that mower, so it's not being used for road department duties. It's only being used for what should be taken out of the trustees. You know, maintaining the facility and maintaining the cemetery. So my only thought, right, wrong, or indifferent, is I was hoping to keep the CARES money separate, or not the CARES money, the Bureau of Workers' Comp money separate from the cemetery discussion. Now, you know, the board can approach that any which way they please, but that was my opinion. So, like I said.
Can you hear me? The board.
Yeah, we can hear you now, Mark. Give me just a second. He's having issues with his connection.
You can transfer money from the general fund to any fund at any point in time. If you still want additional information concerning perhaps expenses that have been incurred over the years, it's not only gas and whatever.
Labor.
But it's
About the only thing you got.
how many hours you spend, that all goes into the calculation. We can transfer that money, doesn't have to be tonight, it can be any time.
Yeah, we're not gonna be mowing cemeteries for quite a while, so, I mean, this is, you know, discussion that could be had at a different time if you.
Although it's probably the last time we want to do anything for 2020.
Right.
I'm not gonna do it in 2020. Whatever you decide tonight, it'll not happen.
Till 21.
We'll put it into 2021. Transfer.
And that's fine, I think it's something we'll lose this off the agenda if we keep punting it too far, so I think we should just make an agreement. If you come back next meeting, that's fine, or next regular meeting, and just tell us what an estimate is, and I assume it's something would be.
Do you want an estimate of the summer, or do you want an estimate of every time you mow? And then at the end of the summer, we add up every time you mow?
No,
Some years are different.
No, I agree,
I can get a rough idea of
Well, I was gonna say,
yearly cost, I mean.
I was gonna say, I would be okay with average, I don't care what we do, I just wanna set it straight and be done with it, you know, it's not that much money, but it does, as you say, accumulate to you guys, and so it's just something I think we should do, obviously, the ORC says. So, back to the works count, I'm okay either way, at the end of the day, I feel like, I hope that all the trustees are reasonable at all times, no matter which trustees are sitting in the seat, and so if we get into a pinch and this workers' comp money is sitting in the general fund, and you guys need something for a specific purpose, I would hope that there would be a reasonable ability to talk about it at that point, but I'm also okay with allocating it back based on how it was paid, and it covers, how many years will that 27,000 cover? I mean, it's gonna cover a lot of years in workers' comp premiums, 4, 5.
I paid, let me just get the number, sorry. I paid almost 7,000, so 27,000 is gonna give us 3.5 years.
Yeah, almost 4 years.
4.
So that's my only thing is, we get this back and say, well, it covers workers' comp for years to come, but it's gonna get lost in the mix as well too. So I don't have a strong preference, and I'll leave it up to anybody else with a stronger opinion. That's just my perspective.
And I believe it's easier to take money from the general fund in the future, move it out, than it is to take from other places and put to the general fund.
Yeah. Illegal.
Right,
Yeah.
exactly.
That's why it's harder.
That's something else to consider, but, I mean, those are premiums that have been paid over the years. I'm fine with putting it back, in the fund, in the funds that they came from.
My opinion, I guess, is that, I apologize, Chief, before I begin. But I know the CARES Act fund went primarily to the police. So you guys, the police department got a significant amount of money, I mean, at the end of the day, whereas the road department didn't. If we would give the road department back their we'll say 21, 22%, whatever it may be. The rest in the general fund, since the police did already get their
You won't find the police department arguing with that train of thought.
I mean, that just logically, I guess, makes sense to me a little bit.
And trash is good.
Now, I mean, our general fund is, since I've been on board, has been, actually, we've been growing it, we've taken a 25% pay cut for years, but, it's been hurting. So I hate to just divvy up the 27,000 that we have and just get rid of all of it. But I'm not opposed to giving the road their percentage since we did give the police the coronavirus funds. That's my 2 cents.
This one, it's one of those things, are any of us going to remember what we did and why we did it? That's the question I have. And that way, call it workers' comp, I would almost rather it be, we're going to give you the past 4 years of what you guys have spent, doing type of thing, to try to reimburse some of that and direct it back. And but then that, again, we still lose this workers' comp piece. So I don't know what the right answer. I totally understand the logic behind it. I guess I would want some kind of reasoning that we can justify of whatever money we transfer over, that it makes some kind of logical sense as to why. I think it might make more, just in my personal opinion, I think it would make more sense to say, they've been fronting calls for a long period of time in the cemetery. We got this workers' comp, we're going to give them $10,000 of it to cover the last 5 years of expenses, and then on a going basis we're going to reimburse them out of the general fund.
Hey, Mark Easton, can you hear me? We're going to say, can't say yes. We are connected, it said. You, this is crazy. We can't talk in because yes. Should we message out, see if they?
Everybody online, we have lost our audio. Give me just a couple of minutes. I'm going to try to get it back online.
Lost your video too. Well, we lost like the last 10 minutes.
Everybody online, the board has decided to take a 5-minute break. We will resume at 8:05. All right, we are now live again.
I think Dr. Cross wanted to speak.
Yes, are you still there, Mr. Cross?
to repeat.
Mr. Cross, are you there?
I am here now. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Hey, that ain't working the other way, so I figured I'd just call Mark and put it on speakerphone.
Put it close to the thing.
What are we gonna hear?
Okay.
Turn up your volume.
Can you hear me now, Jeremy's phone? Whole discussion of the workers' comp funds could read.
Hold on. Oh, I'm gonna mute his computer.
No, I just got it on speaker now.
Mr. Cross, mute your computer. Or turn your microphone off on your computer.
Is that better? Yeah.
Again, we missed that discussion about the Bureau's comp funds going to road. So could someone give a real quick rundown or?
Mr. Cross, are you requesting just a rundown of the workers' comp information that we discussed?
Yeah, if you could,
Okay.
then I may have a comment.
I think the final kind of discussion was to wait till the next meeting to get an estimated cost on the road department's maintenance costs incurred per year for the cemetery maintenance, and then possibly look at reimbursing the township for 3 to 6 years of past maintenance with using some of that Bureau of Workmen's Comp money, and then look at moving forward with paying that cost of cemetery maintenance out of the general fund moving forward, and not so much calling it Bureau of Workmen's Comp money as much as just a payment for the road department out of the general fund for cemetery maintenance in the past and in the future.
Okay, I think that's really fair, certainly to use your opinion, to the road department. Okay, that's fine, thank you.
You're welcome. I'm gonna hang up.
All right.
Technology.
Okay, so if I understand correctly, we are not going to make any decision tonight on this issue. So I'll put that on my report to consider at the first regular meeting, not at Monday's organizational meeting. All right. Then I think we're ready to move back into the rest of the budget review. And if you gentlemen don't want to stay, I don't see a reason why you need to.
Is there any other questions?
Thank you for excusing me.
Turn this off so they can.
You weren't getting up otherwise.
Yeah, no, I thought.
You weren't getting up.
Since you guys are leaving,
I don't know.
Jeremy, can you give your speaker or your microphone to Abra? And then Chief, do you care to put it on one of their desks? Thank you, guys. Good to know. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you very much.
Right.
Been looking at your boots all night.
I love them.
Yes, I love some buffalo plat, I have a problem. Thank you. I do.
Okay. Let's move on to the general fund. And as I did with the other two funds that we've already, or the two departments we've already discussed, I have compared this year's actual spending and this year's approved appropriation budget that you did last January, along with the proposed budget for next year. And I revised it yesterday, so I don't know, Mr. Raymond, of course, you probably don't have the most up-to-date one. The actual spending this year came in at $101,000. The ending balance in the general fund starting the new year will be just under $175,000. I have put in receipts of $104,000, of which general property tax, $33,000 was information that I received from the county auditor. Local government distribution of $19,000 I received from the county auditor. I only put in $10,000 for the cemetery loan payment, which would be one payment. This year they did two, but they're not required to do any, so I thought, well, we'll put $10,000 in. And then the other big item in the revenue is a fixed number, and that's $18,000 that we received from the state of Ohio for the cell tower. And the smaller amounts we have $4,500 in homestead rollback money from the state of Ohio, and I put in $6,000 for licenses and permits. This, of course, is Mrs. Sewell's area. $9,000 for fees and $4,000 for fines. So a total revenue of $104,000. The trust, under the payment area, the first one, the administrative department, the trustee salaries, I based it on this year's actual. And of course, you all know that you've taken a 25% pay cut. I've assumed that will go forward. If you wish to bump it back to your full salary, we're going to have to increase this number. So let's just start right there. Is your plan to continue with 25% pay cut for 2021?
25% pay cut for next year.
Any disagreement with that? Okay.
I think it's helped boost the, general fund. I know when I came on board, it was much lower than what it is currently. If I recall, I think it was less than 50,000. If I could have that wrong, though, that was in like 2017. It was a lot lower than what it is now. So I think it's helped quite a bit.
Okay. The fiscal officer, this year you bumped the fiscal officer back up to 100%, which I personally appreciate, and I think Mr. Keener did during his 3 months. I know I put in a lot of hours here, so thank you very much for that. The rest of the spending in the administrative area, the biggest one is $10,000 in other expenses. This year we spent a little over $11,000. And then the $20,000 payment to the bank for the water and sewer district, which is fixed. So I'm proposing $77,000 of payments in our administrative area. This year we were at $76,000, so we're right in line pretty much with that. The town hall expenses, they're basically estimates, but based on what I see this year, the telephone was actually under budgeted this year. We had to move some of that money into some other accounts. I'm not even sure what the $1,500 was budgeted for this year in contracted services. We had no spending, and I've not budgeted anything. And moving down to the zoning, this year, Mrs. Sewell spent in salary just under $8,600. I put her in at $10,000. Now, the question is, you've given a 2% raise to the road, and you've given a 2% raise to the police. I know she's sitting here, so close your ears.
La 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 la.
Do we increase. Mrs. Sewell has not had an increase since she started in August of 2019. So if we give her a 2% increase, at least she's getting what everyone else gets.
Yeah, and I think that's reasonable. I think, what we need to make sure is whatever Shauna's doing, that we stay in line, you know, just to make sure that this stays reasonable across both departments.
Yes, Shauna should stay.
Yeah, so I think that makes sense, and I would propose doing that.
And I believe the 10,000 should be sufficient to get us at 2%. So it's not a huge number, so. Okay, excellent. I will make that adjustment to your pay on the 15th of January.
I appreciate
After we
it.
approve it on Monday.
Thank you, guys.
It's not unapproved yet tonight.
Right.
Everything else is pretty much standard for zoning. So if you have any questions on any of the general fund before I move on to the garbage fund.
Yeah, go ahead and move on.
I don't know.
Okay, hearing none. Moving over to page 2. Garbage fund has a really healthy fund balance. And I guess, as I understand it from Mrs. Rohrback, and maybe from my discussion, maybe with Mr. Stubbs too, we have avoided raising the garbage fees, even though the cost to Rumpke continues to go up year after year after year. So we actually expect $240,000 in revenue this coming year, and we will pay out $263,000. So we're going to eat into that fund balance by about $20,000 to $23,000 to $25,000, somewhere in that range.
So that means at some point, maybe in the next year or so, look to increase our quarterly trash billing to get back to at least break even. So that's not necessarily something we have to do today. I don't mind eating into it a little bit since it is such a high number, but it's definitely something we want to do at some point this year.
Yeah.
And knowing that Rumpke's also going to increase our bill by, do you remember what that was this week? Was it?
I put a 5% increase for Rumpke. That's what you advised me to do.
So,
This is sad, because my wife gets the bill, but isn't it a flat, like, isn't it like 50 or something? What is the bill? Do you know what the bill is?
I think it's 50, it's like,
57, something.
I thought it was 50.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's a 50, a quarter, yeah.
Okay, then my mistake. What I was going to say is, if it's like a flat $55, maybe we should talk to Shauna and see, like, if we went to the next step of 60, how much revenue does that change? Like, if we're keeping it flat, but
Yeah.
otherwise,
No, it's
there's
just
no.
a random.
Okay, so, okay.
So, and we get that revenue too, and people that don't pay the bill, they let it go past whatever, 150 or whatever we have it set at, the collected on the taxes at the end of the year too.
But I will say to
your
Mr.
point, Mr. Stubbs, that money comes in under account 601, which is the special assessments.
Oh, okay.
That's what's coming in from the county.
Right at it.
This year, we collected over 20,000.
But to Mr. Ramert's point, I think it is high 50s, 57 could be correct. If we did round that up to 60 and made it an even number, that might make it easier for Shauna and for everybody to know my bill's $60 quarterly, and you just do 60 times 4, that's what you pay a year, and it would probably offset that difference too of the money we're losing, and make it possibly easier for the residents to know exactly what they're
But
paying.
yeah, I feel like it's just a transparency thing, right? Like, and if it's easier, absolutely it'd be great. And I'd obviously defer to Shauna and what her experience is, but to me, it's like, for the township folks, if you say, you know, it's 60, and the next time we have to do, if it's 62.50 or to 65, we can say, guys, we hold it for 5 years and kind of eat the differential as Rumpke goes up every single year, but every 5 years, we need to step change, and it's just a transparent change that's very, you know, transparent to them. To me, it gets a little weird. Like, I would think it's a little odd. I mean, 57.80 today, and then I get 59 something. It just seems a little weird. Like, what are they doing? Why is it different? You know, it just seems pretty simple for them. It's just more of a transparency thing if we can step change it every few years and do it like that. But again, not a big deal, not a strong preference.
The other thing I might point out is, as we're talking about Shauna versus Lori doing trash, Shauna's salary is lower than Lori's was, so I've made those adjustments into the salary number that I budgeted. Same number of hours basically, but just at a lower rate. Are there any changes you'd like to see made to the trash budget before we approve it on Monday?
We can change the one later down the road, this coming year. I don't think that's a necessity for today, so I have no changes to make. I would like you at some point to show me how you lock those top couple of rows on the Google Sheets, because I didn't know how you do that. It makes my life a whole lot easier.
Oh,
How you lock those first couple rows on the Google Sheet?
yes.
I don't know how to do that.
Like when you scroll and it locks it so it follows?
Yeah, because I have stuff I do and it drives me crazy, because I always have to go back to the top. So,
I'll
yeah.
show you.
It's so
before you go
easy.
Okay. Probably is easy. I don't know.
One of the tricks of Excel.
Yes.
Okay, the last we have are all the other funds, several of which, of course, represent our funds that we do jointly with the city of Germantown. And as I mentioned with the road levy fund, there has been some concern by the city that we may not have given them everything we should have over the years. And so I do plan at some point in 2021 to work with Pat Shively, the city's finance director, to go through this and determine whether or not they did get everything that they should have received over. And I can only go back to 2013. That's as far as UAN has any information. So anything prior to that, if they didn't get what they should have received, we can't deal with that at this point. But, you know, there's a question on their mind is, why are we keeping fund balances? And that's an interesting point. Why are we? So it's something that I work with Pat. Before I make any extra payments beyond what I'm budgeting for next year, I will come back to you and you will approve those, because that's completely outside of our normal budgeting.
Right.
If I feel after working with Pat that there is a need to give them more money, we will talk about it. So as an example, looking at the park levy, the county has told us we're going to get $69,000 this coming year. And I have estimated the homestead rollback, which comes from the state. I don't get that information from the county, and the state doesn't give it to me either. I just estimated it similar to what we received this year. Given that that total is $78,000, after paying the tax collection fees, I'm saying, well, we'll give them $76,500, and it's going to keep our ending balance in the fund exactly where we start. Until it's analyzed, that's the fund balance. I've done that with all of the funds that we have with the city: the pool levy fund, the fire levy, the senior citizen levy, and the fire EMS levy. All of those ending fund balances, I'm projecting to keep exactly as they are at the beginning of the year, at the end of next year. The only other funds we have are the Sunbury Cemetery Perpetual Fund. That is a restricted fund that was a gift to the township from the Coon family when they restored that cemetery many years ago, probably 20 by now. It's probably been since they restored it. And so that money can only be spent under limited circumstances, and I believe only interest. So we're not able to spend principal.
And we looked into that, I think Dr. Frost did, and he talked to the Coon family about opening that money up, as Jeremy does maintain that as a potential, and they said no. So, it still sits there.
I'm aware of that conversation, and I think at this point, it's just a fund that we have money in and we don't spend, because
Right.
so far this year it got $10 of interest.
Right.
That's not going to even pay to mow it.
No.
So, but we could go back a few years and move some of that interest money if we wanted to. Something I can look into when we get Jeremy's analysis of cemetery maintenance, because that's one of the ones that you're required as trustees to maintain.
Right.
And the only other fund is the Fouts Fund. I've budgeted a $1,000 donation next year. That, of course, will not happen until you approve it when that time comes. But if you're comfortable with me budgeting that, then we can decide, you can decide later how you want it spent, if at all.
I'd like, can we leave it at the 2,000 potentially to donate for next year? We did 2,000 this year. It worked out pretty well with the COVID. And where the money went, benefited the community. We don't have to spend the 2,000, and I don't think if COVID would have happened, I don't think we would have spent the next $1,000, but to have it available to spend, it benefits our community, and we can't do anything else with it. So I would ask that we appropriate 2,000 for that fund for this 2021.
Is there agreement with Mr. Stubbs' recommendation? If so, I'll make that change, and you'll see that on Monday.
I just would like to look at other organizations within the community and not just continually give to the same organization.
That's fine. You'd need to work with the prosecutor's office as well as Dr. Cross, who put in all the time and effort to find out how the money can be spent. I'm not saying it should go to Sunshine and Bank right now. I'm saying we should allow the opportunity to spend $2,000 in our community this year.
I don't think you even need to discuss the recipient tonight. Just
Right.
how much you think you want a budget to spend.
There's specific, very, very specific stipulations on the fund. So, that's an argument for another day, but I would like to put $2,000 in there to have available for whatever organization we choose down the road. Again, there's $36,000 in that account. It gives us an opportunity to benefit the community.
If I recall, the original amount was somewhere under 20,000.
Something happened and they had to put money back from years and years, like in the 1960s. There was something that happened, I believe, like Dr. Cross could probably talk more about it if he's still on. But there was an error made here at the township somehow along the way, and they had to put money back in that fund. And that's why they kind of threw that.
The original bequest was, Dr. Cross, help us out here.
So yeah, they, way back when, they actually started to spend some of the money out of that fund and they weren't supposed to, so they got audited and had to replace a lot of that money. So basically, there is a whole file in Mr. Heaston's office about the Fouts Fund, so you guys can look at that and certainly determine what parameters, he really wanted to use that money for. So that's just a matter of looking over. I've got all my notes and everything is in there, so you're certainly welcome to do that.
If we budgeted 2,000, Dr. Cross, we would not, that would not even bring us close to the original amount that we have to worry about in principle.
Yeah, correct. Yeah, so yeah, you're fine.
Okay, so to question, I don't want to put 2,000 in here and then Monday we have a problem. So unless there's agreement with more than just Mr. Stubbs, I don't want to change, or whatever number you want to use.
Yeah.
So I want agreement tonight so that on Monday it'll pass.
Right.
As is.
Yeah. What I would say is, the way we've approached budgets is appropriate more than we necessarily will spend. I think that's a reasonable approach. I don't think it's unreasonable to talk a little bit about expectation though going into the year, because I feel like this one has been something that we've had some consternation about. So, I mean, you had mentioned to target probably 1,000 unless we had, extended corona or something else.
Right.
And I don't know whether 2's not the right answer. I guess what I would say is, let's all be on the same page of what the expectation is going through the year, just so when this comes up again, like we can finally put this thing to bed. I feel like we spent on this one a little too much.
Oh, definitely did. Crazy reasons, but putting $2,000 in there, but like the original payment was $1,000, and that was what we had planned on. I don't think we had planned originally to get the extra 1,000 to Sunshine and Back last year. It was just there as an opportunity. We have the money to spend, and the community to benefit. So I'm not saying I want to spend $2,000 this year. I just want to have the ability to, especially with Corona going on. We don't know what's going to happen.
No, and that's fair. I think we're all agreeing that if we potentially could give to another one, as long as it's in line with whatever the stipulations are, and that we're not intending to spend the 2,000 to start the year, but we have it there in case circumstances. So that's the kind of conversation. Because I feel like this has come up a couple times, even preceding my time, and it's like, I think we can all move past whatever it is, and let's just kind of have the same agreement going into the year, so we don't get into this knot again in the middle of the year.
Absolutely.
If we wanna talk about specific funds, or I'm sorry, specific organizations to go into, I'm not opposed to doing that. I just think that that is an executive session discussion that needs to be had.
Executive session under what grounds?
I believe it's 121.22 G1.
I don't think we need that executive session tonight.
Well, if we're gonna talk about what funds or who to give it to, I think that's something that,
I don't recommend that you talk about
Okay.
who it gets donated to tonight. I just recommend that you decide what you would like to
Okay.
budget in terms of how much to spend, and then you'll, when you're ready to pay something,
okay,
with the issue of who it goes to.
But to Adam's point, I think what we're all agreeing is, let's put 2,000 in the budget
Right.
for appropriate. We may not spend 2,000, and we may also look at other things outside of sunshine in a bag, and we'll discuss those with Merit when they come up, and we're all open to doing those things.
Yep.
Everybody good with that?
Yeah.
Okay.
So we'll put 2,000 instead of 1,000. I'll make that change. You'll see that in what I give you on Monday. Are there any other changes to any of these other funds that you'd like to see? If not, I think we can say we've done our budget review. All right. Moving on. The next item I had on my list was a discussion of our zoning commission and our board of zoning appeals terms of office and potential also appointments on the two positions, one on each board, that are expiring this year, those terms. Now, we got an interesting, and I thought, an interesting suggestion on how to make the terms of office go in accordance with the ORC. As you are aware, the ORC says that the terms of regular members of both the zoning commission and the board of zoning appeals, and I'm going to read word for word, shall be of such length and so arranged that the term of one member will expire each year. Now, alternate members can be appointed for, according to the ORC, or terms to be determined by the Board of Township Trustees. So the current zoning commission has one term expiring this year, two terms expiring at the end of 2021, and two terms expiring at the end of 22. And the Board of Zoning Appeals has exactly the same situation, one this year, two in 21, two in 22. So obviously, we are not following what the ORC requires. So Dr. Cross's suggestion, if I can paraphrase it, would be to change one term. One term is up this year, so that would be a 5-year term ending at the end of 25. Take one of the terms that ends next year and push it out to a future year, basically give it a short term and move on. So over the next 5 years, one person goes off of each board. If we do that, I want to make those changes by resolution.
Yeah. So I think you said in your notes, and I think it makes sense, a motion for the people that are expiring this year to re-up them to the 5-year term, and a resolution for the 4 other folks that aren't expiring this year to actually change their terms. Is that correct?
That is exactly what I'd like to
The
see.
first thing I'd like to do is, I've tried to reach out to everybody on both of the boards, the city members, and I've either spoken to all of them or at least left them a voicemail about this and let them know we would send them an email, Haley, when we get this resolved. Not a big deal. I don't think it's anything of major concern, but I think, what Mr. Cross put in the email makes a lot of sense, and it's basically what I'd already written out. I think there was only one little slight difference, so it should be reasonable when everybody's seen it. But to start with, on the zoning commission, Daniel Lee expires this year, is who I have expiring at the end of December. So I would like to make a motion for Daniel Lee on the zoning commission, and on the appeals, it would be Joe Scholler, to have both of them renewed for a 5-year term that is in compliance with the zoning, or with the ORC. So moving them both to December 31st of 2025. So that's Daniel Lee on the commission and Joe Scholler on the appeals.
I'll second.
Okay.
Any discussion of the motion to appoint Daniel Lee to the zoning commission for another 5-year term and Joe Scholler to the Board of Zoning Appeals for another 5-year term?
I know Dan's been on for a while and does a great job. Joe Shaw, you couldn't ask for a more qualified person for that position, so, that he has, they're both fantastic. I'm happy that they're willing to stick around for another term.
And to that point, as we're having discussion, everyone I did speak to, and I spoke to at least 7 of the 10 folks, actually have a discussion with them, and all of them wanted to stay and wanted, were happy with what was going on. So, that's great. It's fantastic for us. A lot of these people, as you see on the terms that Haley should just brought up, are very long tenured folks, but a lot of experience. So great. I mean, as we get opportunities, put new people on there and diverse perspectives, definitely keep doing that. But I think it's a fantastic mix of people with a lot of experience, and they're all happy to be there.
I think at some point, there's a few zoning commission members that would like to pass on their seat to someone else, but they're not up this year.
Well,
And so that's a discussion for.
yeah, and I would love to have that to a little more clarity around it, because I have heard, in fact, I mean, Kurt's not on tonight. I did talk to Mr. Jacoby. I spoke to Mr. Jacoby, I don't know, maybe a few days ago, and about this, because, you know, when I came to speak about being a trustee, you know, it was mentioned about coming and joining zoning, and it was interesting because there was no open positions on the zoning or appeals commission or appeals at the time, and so I was a little confused by that. But, you know, when I spoke to everybody, you know, they all said, you know, I would definitely want to do it. There was one person that offered up performing some other services for us and even stepping back if we wanted them to do that capacity stuff, but it didn't seem like anybody was itching to get off. Now, I know there was one person that we might all be thinking of that I didn't speak to, and that person may be ready to come off, but of the other 4 that I spoke to, they all seemed like they were still interested to stay on. So I don't know if it's worth having a second discussion, if you guys feel like that, or.
Yeah, whenever. That's not something, that's just something to keep in mind down the
Okay.
road.
Okay.
That I've been told as well, so.
Okay.
That they were,
Okay.
a couple of them.
Okay. And it's the first time I've talked to a lot of people, so
Okay.
maybe they weren't wanting to broach the subject at that time, but, okay. So fair enough, so that one, I'm good if there's any other discussion, otherwise I'll make the resolution.
Well, we haven't voted on the
Yeah,
motion.
right, yep.
So, any further discussion of the motion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion is passed, approved.
Okay, so the second piece of this is, as Mark had mentioned, is we have 4 of them expiring in the next 2 years from now on each board, and they really should be over the next 4 years. So I'm gonna introduce a resolution 2020-45.
Actually, I must make a correction. The resolution we passed earlier in the meeting should have been number 45.
Okay.
I misspoke at the time, so this one's gonna be 2020-46.
And so what I would offer, and I'll just detail out the names as I go through the resolution here, that probably makes it easier for you to document, but introduce resolution 2020-46 to change the, term expirations on the zoning commission and zoning appeals members to make them compliant with the ORC. To do this, I would ask that Paul Doles on the zoning commission be moved to December 31st, 2022. Fred Glanders to December 31st, 2021. David Jinks to December 31st, 2024. And Marvin Rieger to December 31st, 2023. We've already had Mr. Lee move to 25, so that would be over the next 5 years for the zoning commission.
So that would keep Mr. Glander as he is at present.
That is correct. So
Okay.
there was 2 people expiring next year. He stayed. The other one I pushed back 1 year. It's pretty much as Mr. Cross had provided an email, just shifting everyone back a year basically. On the appeal side, Mr. Peter Lurker to December 31st, 2024. Valerie Hill to December 31st, 2022. Delone Jones to December 31st, 2023. And Adam Blakely to December 31st of 2021, which again, Mr. Blakely, he was set to expire at that point in time as well. So it is not a change as well.
So I'll second the resolution.
Is there any discussion of resolution 2020-46?
Is there any way this was just an error in the past of not updating as we?
I think that that is the case, that it was just an error, because when I came into my office, it was posted on my wall, and it had not been updated in some time. So I talked to a few of the board members, I think I might have even talked to you, just asking if anybody knew specifically when the terms expired. I did not see any other documentation other than what was posted, for those expiring terms.
Yeah, I did have a couple, I asked those folks the question, like, do you know when you expire, just in case we had missed documents.
Right, yeah.
It was kind of funny, because some were like, oh, every 2 years, some were like, oh, every.
Yeah, that's exactly
They didn't clearly have the expectation as well, so.
Yeah, that was exactly the conversation when I talked to them, if they knew. Some of them said 2, some said 5, so.
Either way, we're just cleaning it up.
Yep, I appreciate you guys doing that also.
Any further discussion? I'll call the roll. Mrs. Reed?
Yes.
Mr. Stubbs?
Yes.
And Mr. Raymer?
Yes.
Resolution 2020-46 is adopted. Now, I don't know that we have specific term limits for the alternates. And as I read earlier from the ORC, they have to be appointed for terms to be determined by the Board of Township Trustees. So I don't know whether you want to do a resolution saying once and for all how long those terms last as alternates.
Yeah, my preference was, and I think it might be consistent with how we're doing it, is to do 2-year terms. My thought, and I'm open again on this one, it's not like I have a strong opinion, it's just that it's kind of a feel-out session for both sides. I think doing it for 5 years, I don't necessarily think we need to be consistent on it. I think it gives an opportunity for them to feel it out, us to feel it out, and generally, you know, these positions come open from time to time, they're gonna move up into a board position and assume whatever that term is anyways, so that's my general thought, but open to whatever you're saying.
2 years is fine, 5 years is fine,
Okay.
I'm comfortable.
To start that out, do we want all 4 of these current alternates to be on 2-year terms, or do you want to stagger to start with going and then go forward with 2 years after that?
matters much from the alternate side.
Let me look here anyways.
Do you know their start term? Because that will,
There's definitely movement there, so.
Yeah.
So currently, for the BZA, I only have 1 alternate.
You'll have,
Oh, that's right,
then if you left that the same and then Albert joined, it would be every other then?
that would be every other.
The other thing about the good point is, Rachel is joining at year end, but we're gonna have oftentimes where someone joins in the middle of a year, and so, I mean, really, what are we saying, December, you know, not to exceed 2 years from now? I mean, what, just say, I can't, I would probably put it that way, just so everybody expires in December, and we can manage it in December. So a December not to exceed 2 years from whenever they're appointed, you know? So for instance, Rachel will be 2 years from now.
So another thing that I was not aware of when Mrs. Hill moved up to the board, that she should have obtained the, what am I trying to say? The term for who she replaced.
I thought it was that way.
Yeah, so I'm not sure if it was documented that way or not. So on the zoning commission board, Mr. Jacoby has been an alternate for quite some time. And then Mr. Cross just became an alternate earlier this year.
But we didn't set a
So-
term limit for him when he was
Right,
appointed,
right, yeah,
nor did we for Mrs. Albert at our meeting earlier this
Correct.
month. And I don't know about Mr. Cox, that was last year, I guess, that he was appointed.
it was this, no, it was last year. It was in 2019.
So if we do a resolution saying that all 4 of these alternates have terms expiring at the end of 2022, that would give them 2 years. If you're comfortable with all 4 and then doing it that way. Or you could do 2 to expire at the end of next year, and 2 at the year after, and then everybody from then on is 2 years, whatever you want.
I just hate for both the alternates to expire at the same time. How does that matter if they're both, you know, both of the alternates and both of the zoning? commission alternates expiring at the same time.
So if we have one expiring from each board at the same time, it does, or from different boards. Does that make sense? So if one alternate from the zoning commission and one alternate from the BZA both expire at the same time, that's fine.
Yes, but I think he was proposing having them all expire at the same time. All 4 would expire the same year. I would feel more comfortable if we did one expire 1 year and the next one expire the next year.
I think you could transition this for the transition period, you say 2 are gonna expire at the end of 21, 2 at the end of 22, but then at the end of 21, they get appointed for 2 years.
Yes, so then it would automatically,
So there's a
Cycle every 2
transition
years.
right now, but then going forward, everybody is on an alternate 2 years
yes.
on each.
That just makes more sense to me that it's an alternating 2 years and not them all gone at once.
Well, I
Well, they're
think
not all
that,
gone if they want to come back.
yeah.
Yes.
Right.
It's not like you're jumping.
You're gone.
It is very simple to do it that way as a proposal, because it looks like Marty and Kurt are both at the end of 21. I think for a 2-year, Mr. Kroll should be on there till the end of 22, and we would also be adding Rachel for 2 years, so that already alternates both of them,
Yeah.
one ending this year, one ending next year.
Yeah.
Let's just do it that way, add Rachel for 2, put Mr. Cross at 22, and, that'll take care, and then it'll be 2 years after that.
So it might be easier to do it in 2 resolutions. The first one defining the 4 current, when their terms are gonna end, and then a resolution that would state that new appointments at the end of each term will be for 2 years, if you agree that that's the amount of time.
Introduce resolution 2020-47 to set the, terms or change the terms for our current alternates. On the commission, Mr. Jacoby would stay the same at December 31st of 2021. Dr. Cross would get moved to December 31st of 2022. And then on the BZA, Marty Cox would stay the same at December 31st of 2021, and then we'd be adding Rachel Albert for 2-year terms, December 31st of 2022.
We're not sharing our screen publicly, are
No.
we? Okay, then what's that information?
Right.
We'll second that.
Any further discussion of resolution 2020-47? Hearing none, I'll call the roll. Mrs. Reed,
Yes.
Mr. Stubbs,
Yes.
and Mr. Raymond.
Yes.
And then I'll introduce resolution 2020-48 to set the alternate, for the BZA and zoning commission alternate terms to 2-year terms ending in December.
I'll second.
For new appointments. Let's put those words in, because you don't want to.
For new,
Yeah.
well, they're 2-year terms, okay, yes,
Yeah, for
fine,
any-
for
for
any
new
new appointments or for renewals, it will be 2-year terms.
Yes.
No, I did not share my screen. I just wanted you guys to be able to see this in case you didn't have it. Right.
There's some phone numbers in there that.
Yeah, this is not a public document.
I guess what I'll say is, when the present term's in, the new term will be 2 years.
That's fine, yep.
Is there a second to that?
Yes.
Thank you. Any discussion of 2020-48? If not, I will call the roll. Mrs. Reed,
Yes.
Mr. Stubbs,
Yes.
and Mr. Raymer.
Yes.
Resolution 2020-48 is adopted. All right. The next item I have on the agenda deals with the park levy. As you know, the current 1.5 mil parks levy expires at the end of 2021. And that renewal was last passed as a renewal, that levy was last passed as a renewal in November 2016. The vote was actually rather close. I was surprised to see that. The vote was 2,300 in favor and 2,168 against. So if we will probably want to place a renewal on the levy on a ballot sometime in 2021. One option is to place it on the May primary. And if you decide to do that, the deadline for submission is February 3rd. So we're getting kind of close to that. But Judy Gilliland, the city manager at the city of Germantown, did contact the Board of Elections and was told at this time, they're placing a levy on the primary ballot would be considered a special election for us here in German Township and Germantown, because there is no other city or township elected office on the ballot. If some other entity places a countywide issue, maybe like the parks, Metro Parks or Sinclair or something on the primary ballot, we would then share in the cost of the election, but we would still have to pay something for that. If no other entity countywide put a levy on, we would bear the full cost of having it on the May primary. So the city council has asked us at the township to give them some guidance as to whether we want to consider using the May primary and potentially paying the full cost of the election.
I think that's pretty costly.
I think if, we talked about that for one of the road levies, and I think it was like $1,500, I wanna say, $100 or $2,000. I mean, I'm not saying that's the way to go, but, now it's been, I mean, it's been since I've been on here. But I don't know how well the voters are gonna take us shelling out $1,500 to run a levy, so.
And my memory is a significantly higher amount,
I was
Is
thinking
it?
5,000.
Oh, was
Yes.
it? Okay.
even
You could
pushing
be right.
closer to 10.
Because you're
You got 7 precincts.
Okay. You could be right.
I think the 1,500 was on top of whatever else was going on.
So maybe we were sharing it, and that
You
was
might
just
have
our
been
share. Okay.
Because when the city did special road levies in August or in May, it was an expensive process. So I can't imagine you want to do that, but they want your opinion, so what should I tell the city?
I don't,
think unless there's something else on the ballot, there's no reason you consider putting it on in May. Cost-wise, especially, you're gonna eat into a huge chunk of the small levy that comes in anyway, what is it, $60,000 or $70,000 comes in, so take $10,000 out of that or wherever we're headed, that's.
Out of a $60,000
Right,
levy.
That's not feasible.
yeah.
The other part, should it be a replacement or renewal, that's up to the board, park board, that's not a decision that we should be making today, that recommendation should come from the park board.
Yeah, I did reach out to Judy because I thought, and this was my mistake, that, I know it was on, Mr. Houston's list of things for the December meeting, so I actually reached out to Judy that same day of the meeting, just to see if they had already touched base with the parks or what, because I hadn't heard anything from them. And she said they had not reached out to the park board, and, we discussed if that's something I thought needed done, and I absolutely think that they need, they see the budget, they oversee it, I think we need their opinion. And Mr. Houston did put on there that there was one member that she thought right off the bat has mentioned for years that it needed an increase, but as far as the park board as a whole, she was unsure. So she was going to get their thoughts and I believe get back. And was that your thoughts from her as well? Okay, I haven't heard if they've had a meeting. I assume with the holidays, they probably haven't yet.
Probably not. You know, the issue of renewal versus replacement is a significant issue because of the increased property values, 19% for area code 45327 going forward. So,
But it goes back to whenever the original one was passed, so it could be 20 years. You're going back 20 years on property value too. I don't know when the original one, but the most recent replacement was done. So.
but then the offset of the higher property values with a replacement would also mean a reduction in the rollback money that we get from the state. I don't know whether that's dollar for dollar. I really don't know how that works. Okay, so we agree. Well, Mrs. Reed, maybe you could take the message back to
Yeah, I don't
Judy,
mind
go
calling
in.
Judy and
I mean, is that everyone's consensus, is that we think it's silly to pay that money for the May primary?
I don't think it's the right thing, though. I know we put ourselves, I guess, in a precarious situation, though, because we'll have one shot to pass it before it expires, is that November?
Yeah.
And if it does expire,
Wait, it expires at the end of 2021. When does the collection stop? Does that stop in 21 or does it go extra calendar year? You know?
I think that it would go to 2022,
Okay, so that
but
gets,
again, if it didn't pass in 2021,
right.
then you would not have that in 2022. You would lose a year of parks revenue.
And the park board budget is already tight.
Yeah, yep. I mean, I looked at, I actually have it here, I brought it just because, I mean, we went over it pretty early this year, but, I mean, the whole budget's like $130,000, and it looks like, you know, Germantown is putting in the remainder that doesn't come from the $60,000 levy. And some of it's from grants and stuff that they apply for too, for parks grants, but, yeah, I mean, I think it needs to be put up, obviously, but again, I'm not the type that likes to rush any of these things to the ballot, because if people aren't educated, it's not gonna pass anyways, and so I feel like we need to make sure we're getting the right communication out there and that people understand it. This is one thing I was talking with Haley tonight, she's working on our website, and it's like, things need to get posted on websites, they need to be out there for the public to see, they need to be prepared and discussed before we just put them on a thing that's gonna fail anyways, and we're paying for it, so I would not be in favor of it.
So,
Is that it?
November.
November, so that's what, I'll take that back to Ms. McGill and I'll let her know, yes.
thank you very much.
Yes, and I'll find out when the Parks Board is having a meeting too, and let you guys know if they've met and what their consensus is about raising it, leaving it the same, and then.
Yeah, it was, there was just email, we have met, November, December, it was all more around staying on the park and all that kind of stuff. The email did come from, I don't know if it was from Judy, but it did come from the city of Germantown asking that question. And there wasn't significant feedback on the email chains, but it's just been through email right now. I think there was maybe one response, and I can probably pull it up pretty quickly, but I don't wanna belabor the point, that I think they do think that an increase is merit from the one perspective that came in, so, again, I think back to the point of if Germantown, I think we all know that Germantown is not flush with cash. And so I can totally understand the perspective of trying to increase it to be more self-sufficient, you know, because it's not self-sufficient today, it's getting subsidized. So, that's where it seems. I don't have enough experience on that oversight to have a strong opinion on that either yet. I mean, I do understand it's being subsidized, but I also understand that some of those funds are going to pay salaries, I believe, at Germantown, because they're the ones that are maintaining the parks and stuff like that. So, again, until I understand it more deeply, I don't have a strong opinion.
Okay.
Just keep this in mind, because I think the deadline for the November election is probably August.
Yes.
So we're gonna have to begin this process by mid to late spring.
Yeah, that's something we should push. I mean, you can talk with Judy, and I'll take it back to the parks, that we need to drive that discussion back to both Germantown and German Township to have a strong perspective and what we think and why and all that kind of stuff.
So your oversight should vote to replace, renew, whatever, and then you bring that back to us. So.
Right, okay.
I'm not going through a levy election here, but if I remember correctly, you first go to the county auditor to get information about what it will generate based on a certain millage, and then you go back later with a second resolution that goes to the Board of Elections.
I believe that's right, you have to secure the fund, I don't know. Mark Keener would be a better.
But there's a whole process.
Yeah.
It doesn't all happen
Right.
at one time.
No.
So we need to allow time for that process to go through and then get it passed at no later than the July meeting.
Oh, yes.
And I would allow for at least 30 to 60 extra days due to delays with COVID. Anything on the county level.
All right. Anything else on the parks? Very good, thank you very much. My last main item is a situation that cropped up when I paid out vacation time to some of our policemen who wanted to cash out their vacation. And after doing that and paying my month-end OPERS payment, OPERS came back to me and said, well, please explain why the OPERS earnings for that particular month for that particular officer were higher than normal. And when I told them it was because we paid out vacation time, I got a message back saying that's not considered earnable salary for OPERS because your township does not have a conversion plan on file with us. The ORC requires that a conversion plan be filed with OPERS once a year by a government body that wants their vacation or sick time payout to be considered earnable salary for OPERS. The township, to my understanding, has been paying out unused vacation time to employees for years. How this never hit OPERS' radar screen that we were doing this, I don't know. And perhaps we didn't even try to send it on as earnable salary for OPERS. But I did try to do that, and it bounced back. So we got a refund check that I had to give back to the police officers, and we got credit for our portion that we paid to OPERS. Now, that does not apply to comp time payout. So when we paid Jeremy Holbrook his comp time that you approved a month or two ago, and I reported it OPERS, it went through just fine. The ORC specifically says vacation, sick, and any other PTO type time. So if you wish that these kind of payouts to our, to our employees becomes earnable salary for OPERS, we need to approve a conversion plan. And I've given you language that OPERS had me turn into a document. They gave me the template. And if you want to do that, we'll do that by Resolution 2020-49.
Is there any downside to doing this, on your opinion?
Well, the downside is, for the employee, that it does affect how much retirement they're going to get. Now, it's probably minuscule, but it does have an impact. The upside for the township of not doing it is we won't have to pay our portion of OPERS. For policemen, that's 18% of whatever they get paid for their vacation time. For the road department, it's 14%. So that's the upside for us of not doing it, but at the same time, it's the downside for our employees. And if we do it, then every year I will have to come to you at the end of the year and we'll approve a plan for the following year. This plan would just be valid for 2021 if you decide to do it.
So is that something we need to do tonight, or if we do that at the organizational meeting?
You can do it at any time.
Okay.
Sure. It doesn't really matter. It's a simple resolution that we will pass if you want to do it.
My initial thought is, there was two separate ones when we had this talk with Jeremy a while back. Vacation, there's comp time. Vacation makes sense to me to pay the match on it or the contribution, because it's like, if you're working, let's just say straight 20/80 a year, which is just full-time hours, you're not gonna take some hours paid unless you take vacation for it, so you're still at 20/80, so we're still paying the same contribution for OPERS. The comp time is a little bit different because you accrue more and et cetera, et cetera. The vacation I have no issue with. We can vote on it later or have a talk, but the comp time, I think I would be a little bit more concerned about trying to pay a contribution on a comp time.
There wasn't, did you say there was not an issue with the comp time when you ran Jeremy's through?
There is no issue. The rules are very clear about comp time.
Okay.
It is earnable salary if that comp time was earned in the current year.
Okay.
And it is not earnable salary if it was earned in a prior year. But there is no plan that needs to be filed with OPERS concerning that.
Okay.
So when I did pay Jeremy his 120 hours, we calculated how many of those hours he had earned in 2020 and how many he had earned in 2019. And I paid him in two different checks because of that. And you notice tonight, in the payment register, there were actually two checks paid to Jeremy for that complement. And that's because I separated out the earnable versus the non-earnable earnings for OPERS.
And if I remember on his, we also were trying to set up a policy where he didn't have that issue in the future where he got his comp time every year, because sometimes he was letting it fall off and he wasn't getting paid. He would obviously want to get it paid out in that same year so he could get this benefit. I don't necessarily agree with it, but if OPERS allows for it, then that's fine. It's whatever they allow for. But Jeremy's underpaid. We all know that, so I'm not going to fight this in any way, shape, or form. I just find that one a little bit odd. But vacation, I don't have as much concern.
So is there anything you want to do tonight with this?
We can wait if you
Think of the board meeting, I don't have any feeling one way or the other without.
The only thing, I guess, let's just ask the question of how much do we have an estimate of how much it'd be? I hate to make this on a dollars and cents and not a principal basis though, but I mean, it would be probably wise for us to understand what the hit on this would be compared, this would be different, right? Because, yeah, obviously, or we haven't done it in a large lump sum in the past, or versus never caught it, or what's the issue? You know, if there's gonna be a change in dollar wise estimate?
Two of them, we've already received the money back. Our portion was under $100 each, so a couple $100. Our portion of the contribution to OPERS. There are actually 3 others that we haven't yet received the money back from OPERS, but I would expect they're going to be somewhat the same range.
No,
And that represented 24 hours of vacation.
well, I guess I'm misunderstanding maybe, but I guess what I was thinking is up to 160 hours is what it says here in this conversion chart of vacation leave. If every single one of the people want to get paid out for the 160 hours that we have on staff and we pay OPERS contributions on that, because that's a choice, right, is whether we're gonna pay the OPERS contribution or not by making this conversion chart. So I'm wondering how much in totality those dollars would be annually from us choosing to do this or choose not to do this.
Okay, well, we're not discussing changing the comp time payout plan.
It's the OPERS contribution on it, right?
No, we're talking about the payout for vacation.
I'm sorry, the OPERS contribution on the payout for vacation.
Yes.
That's what we're choosing between, right?
Yes.
But that's a pretty significant number.
Well, it depends on how much the officers or the road department uses their vacation versus wants to be paid out in cash.
Okay.
So there's no way to really
Okay,
predict
yeah,
what it's
okay,
going to
fair
be
enough.
going forward.
I trick it.
But when we pay out comp time to anyone,
Mhm.
it's very clear in the
Yeah.
rules. And so there's nothing we need to do and nothing we can do to change those.
Yep.
The only thing we can do if we want to, if you want to, is allow vacation payout to be eligible for OPERS, which means we contribute.
Yeah, I apologize, I must have been saying comp time, I was meaning vacation, I knew.
Okay,
I said we were
okay.
on the comp. So, yeah, so to your point, we don't know how much payout they'll want, anybody will want during a given year of their vacation time. But the question is, do we wanna pay OPERS on that or not? That's the question, okay? And to that point, I don't know if there's a significant of people paying that out in cash or taking all their vacation. I can't imagine it's that high, so again, I can't imagine it's that much. And again, I understand why they would want it, and I don't think anybody necessarily is overpaid here, so I feel fine to pass that. I can't imagine it's more than a couple $1,000s a year. We're just talking about the OPERS contribution on paid out vacation.
Mr.
I would imagine
Houston?
our portion would not exceed
A couple thousand, yeah.
Somebody want to speak?
Mr. Houston, this is Mark Cross. I just had a question. So is the vacation time for the police paid out of the police department, paid out of their budget?
That is correct, Mr. Cross.
Yeah, so the OPERS would be paid out of their budget versus it's not coming out of the general fund.
It
For
is
the
not
police.
coming out of the general.
Okay,
Out of the
good.
police
Okay,
fund.
that was my question. Thank you.
So I think that brings up a good point. Maybe we need to bring Joe and Jeremy back in on this conversation, maybe at the org meeting, make sure they're comfortable with it, hitting their budget. But, you know, we should treat our employees well, and they do a fantastic job. So I'm now leaning towards doing it just for the benefit of our employees down the road.
Well, let me put it this way. Up until now, the presumption is that we were paying it
Right.
until we were told about the situation that came up with the payment that I made in November to one particular police officer. When OPERS told me about it, I said, well, we've had other situations this year like that. We've had 5 in total. Well, they're all invalid. You can't use,
So,
you know, and I have to be honest, if we're doing it wrong, then I have to report it to them that we did it wrong.
right.
I don't know whether we did it wrong in prior years or not. I'm not even gonna look there.
I just did the rough estimate. One person paying out all 160 hours of vacation in a year, it's like $500. So, I mean, we're talking per employee, that's probably about the maximum. So, again,
We're not gonna do that,
right.
so.
If they want to absorb it, I agree. Chief Ainsick and Jeremy can weigh in on it, but at the end of the day, it's whether we wanna set up a policy that allows for it in the first place or not, but I agree, we can bring them in. I'm okay either way. I think it's, to your point, no one's being overpaid around here.
Right, that's for sure. So, let's just wait till, if you're good with it, let's wait till the oral meeting, or our first actual meeting, maybe more preferable. And get Jeremy and Joe and both, make sure they're comfortable with it, and then I'm fine with it. Fine with it.
The only other subject that I did put on this special meeting notice, if you wanted to talk about it, if there's anything to talk about tonight, it would be the website and emails, but given the hour, even if you wanted to talk about it, you might want to wait for another meeting.
Yeah. Anything we have to do tonight, if not,
Can you show them the website of what you have up so far?
I can.
While she's doing it, I'll give you the real quick synopsis. So, we did find out from Village of Farmersville that they're using, a Gmail G Suite, which they use it for nonprofits. We looked into the nonprofits, it's free for nonprofits, so it's gonna be fantastic for email, but,
Okay, that's what my school uses, I think, because it goes all through Gmail.
which is okay, but it explicitly says on the website, not governmental entities, or not. So we would have to do like professional or the business, which is back to paying for it. Rough estimate I'm throwing out here is like $600.
Yeah.
But there's some options.
per year.
Yeah. That's everybody. That's everybody.
That would be for the minimum,
That's website.
Oh, such, no.
no,
That's not.
that's email.
I will say that,
So I don't wanna say it's just email, because there's a whole lot that is included with the email subscription. All of that.
But just to keep it simple, because there's options and we'll bring them forward, it is Gmail, G Suite, you can say if you use it and stuff, but, it gives you a pretty substantial amount of options and it gives us all the consistent email. We can use it with the domain. It'll give us all consistent. We were thinking about using $400 a year for the .gov, so it's just slightly more than that, so.
the nice thing about it is calendar, because I kind of live by my Google Calendar. And so we could have like a township calendar.
Yes.
And then all of you guys can share it and see it. The presidents of the BZA and the
Yes.
the zoning commission could easily see when meetings are. I mean, you can have your own private stuff on there and then it's just yours, and add it to that calendar, but it is really nice. With that, you can share documents pretty easily too, because it's through Gmail. So you can share things, type on them, edit them. It's what my work uses, and I mean, and we get, I don't know exactly what the memory is, that you get with it, but you'll get like a.
30.
Okay, so then you could save the documents, the minutes, you know, if you want to take notes or whatever, it could be saved on your account, but then you could access anywhere instead of in my notebook that I forget sometimes.
So I do have just a quick rundown of things that it offers. It has its own security, so everything will be secured, with that on top of our security here. 30 gigs for each user. You can sync your old accounts, up to 30 email aliases per user, includes Google Calendar and Google Meet. So there's that. Google Pages to share across departments, shared drives, shared docs, works on computer, phone, and tablet. It says even without internet, not sure how that works, but apparently it does. They also have 24/7 tech support.
So she's looked at a lot of this stuff and she's getting, obviously, the GoDaddy website up, which I think is looking.
That's very nice, yeah.
Coming along really well, and I think, you know, we can continue to build that out to model against whatever we see as best practice, and then the email, again, Google was down probably the first time I'd ever heard of. Last week, I think we all were part of that deal, but, Gmail should never really go down, and so I've heard GoDaddy, the host could be hit or miss sometimes, and so paying for it, I think it's better to do the Gmail approach, and like I said, Village of Farmersville has been using it for years and likes it.
Will this be up by the first of the year?
Yes. I only have a couple more documents to upload and the pictures taken tonight, and then it'll be ready to go.
I'd like to be able to post and I think I sent them to you, the notices of our
Yes.
upcoming meetings.
Yes, I'm
You know,
also
our current
going,
website, we did not get to post tonight's meeting, or actually the one we had, any meeting this month has not been on our website. So I'm glad
Okay.
to know that we are able to do that.
So a couple of things that, I also want to include with the website. So if and when we get the, Google stuff up and going, I can make a calendar that is for all events for the public. And then I can literally just link the calendar to this page here, and it will show them as soon as I upload it into the calendar. So that's pretty nice. Another thing, Tyler and I were talking a little bit before the meeting. I think I'm going to make another, tab that just has general, like, upcoming information. That might, like, just an informational page.
It'd just be a general communication tab of whatever we want to communicate.
Yeah, whatever needs to be, out for the general public, like hours of pancake breakfast or,
Shouldn't say in a public meeting, I'll sign Mr. Houston up to put some financials out there and we can really inform
Yeah.
the public. But you can do, I mean, that's the thing about this is you can get as, transparent as we want to get with this website, and I think she's made it, point and click, and Haley's done a great job with this, so I want to say thanks to her, because I know I don't have this expertise, so she's obviously put some time and effort into this, and I think it's going to be a huge benefit for the community, and I think we should leverage this more than what we've done in the past.
Did anybody see the old German Township picture that was floating around the internet maybe 4 or 5 days ago? It was what this building looked like, maybe in the 50s or 60s.
no.
It appears that, the road department was the same. This looked relatively the same, and then from here over was a garage, maybe that used to house.
They built this in like 99,
The original part of the building is the middle part.
which is.
Yes.
The garage, where the police department is now, was the garage. This didn't exist.
Okay, well, they have a picture of it, and it was neat to look at, so it was floating around on the Germantown.
They used to have the meetings for the German Township.
Was it the Valley?
Yes, you had, the township had a small room, they owned the Opera
This
House
one,
to
Abra?
begin with, the trustees. But they had a small room. When El Rancho was still open, it was the very back dining room on the Center Street side.
Okay,
That was the township office.
interesting.
Because when I grew up, that's where we went to vote.
Oh, I don't know.
Anyways, it's neat to see.
Outside of my office.
Yeah.
They've been posting pictures. It's the same gentleman. I don't recognize his name, but I just saw this and thought it was neat to look at.
Didn't
All right,
realize it was
anything
a
else
private
tonight?
group.
That's everything on mine.
Motion to adjourn?
Second at 9:17.
Who was the second? Abra? Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
We are adjourned. Thank you very much. I thought this worked well when they